Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about some of the common signs that I see in enmeshed family systems, and if you experienced enmeshment trauma in general, you're probably going to be familiar with some of these dynamics. So let's get started. The very first sign is what I call emotional overfunctioning. So for a child, this means that you are feeling responsible for the emotional experience of your parents, which is an inappropriate role to be in because you are never responsible for the emotional experience of your parents. They are responsible for helping you learn to deal with yours. That's the way it should happen in a healthy relationship. But in enmeshed family systems, we get conditioned and programmed to believe that we are responsible for essentially regulating our parents' emotional experience. This example can be something as simple as you feel responsible for making your mother feel happy when she comes home feeling sad. So you go over there and you try to make her happy through whatever way you typically are used to. It could be as big as, you have a parent who is suffering from severe depression, is very, very lonely, and has gone into a deep, dark hole, and you feel responsible for saving them and pulling them out of that. And you actually end up playing this role of a therapist or of a savior of some kind. This could also show up as like a type of walking on eggshells, or shrinking ourselves or contorting our behavior in order to prevent certain emotional states in our parents. So prevent them from getting angry, prevent them from feeling frustrated or disappointed in us. So even managing our parents' expectations of us, like if they expect us to get straight A's and then we get 1B, and we are so scared that they're going to get angry at us, right? And that we have to do whatever we can in order to protect them from feeling angry. That is a type of emotional overfunctioning. You are feeling responsible for your parents' emotional experience and emotional state. And so therefore you are having to work to maintain the relationship, to perform, to contort yourself, to change your behavior, to constantly worry, to be hypervigilant. That's an inappropriate role for a child to be in. Parents need to be 100% responsible for their emotional experience, for their emotional regulation process. And children should never have to worry about that. Children should feel free to explore their own emotional experience and receive guidance and support in learning how to deal with that so that they can become emotionally healthy and emotionally mature adults in the world. The second and common sign that I see is unclear emotional boundaries and unclear boundaries in general. People in enmeshed family systems do not know how to set boundaries. They do not know how to receive boundaries. They do not know how to respect boundaries. There is this sort of common accepted belief, maladaptive belief, that we do whatever is other people are expecting of us, and we can never say no. If we say no, then we feel guilt and shame. We feel like we are a bad person. We feel like we are hurting others if we set a boundary. And this obviously creates unhealthy relationship dynamics because boundaries are intended to actually make relationships emotionally healthier. For example, if you are feeling angry or you are feeling incredibly stressed from a long day at work, and you come home and you finally have a moment to just sit in your corner in your room and read, you are at your emotional capacity. You have had such a long day. All these issues came up during your workday, and now you're kind of recovering and regulating. And you're sitting in your corner and you're finally being able to calm down and recharge so that you can finish a really important assignment that you have that night that's due by like 11 p.m. Your mom, if you're in an enmeshed family system, she comes home, she barges into your room, and she says, "Come make dinner with me right now." Now, if you are in a healthy family system, your mother probably would have knocked on your door. She probably would have said, "Do you have a moment? Would you like to make dinner together?" And you would have felt free to say, "Mom, right now I'm feeling a little stressed. I'm trying to recharge because I have an assignment I have to finish tonight. Can we do this tomorrow? Can we leave this for tomorrow?" she would have been like, yes, of course. Or given you some sort of other alternative. Yes, of course, but I kind of missed you today and I was just wanting to be a little bit close. So how about you come read in the living room and I'll make you some dinner. That way you'll be a little bit closer to me, but you can still relax and do what you need to do. And maybe you would have felt open to that alternative, like a negotiation that you guys found a common ground on where both needs could be met, right? Those are healthy boundaries. Boundaries that respect each person's emotional capacity and emotional needs, but also allow for the relationship connection to also be maintained, right? In an enmeshed family system, this is not how it happens. In an enmeshed family system, you would not feel safe setting a boundary in that moment. So you would end up self-sacrificing. You would get up, put your book down, and go make dinner with her because that's what she is expecting of you. So you would not feel safe setting a boundary because if you did set a boundary, she might get angry, she might get disappointed, she might get reactive, and an argument might unfold. She might give you the silent treatment. A number of ways that this could essentially unfold after that, but it prevents you from setting the boundary in an enmeshed family system. So in enmeshed family systems, again, unclear boundaries, even though boundaries are healthy, because the only point of boundaries is to respect our emotional experience, our emotional needs in that moment, so that we can actually have healthier relationships that are based on the truth of our emotional experience. Meaning we relate to each other, we connect, we spend time together when we actually have the capacity and the desire to be there in that shared moment together. And if we're needing some time for ourselves so we can regulate, so we can recharge, so we can do something that makes more sense for us in that moment, we are allowed to have boundaries, right? Or setting a boundary with like a behavior, for example. There's something that a person says to you or does that consistently makes you feel hurt, right? Like you are feeling triggered by that relationship, by that interaction in that relationship. Well, then you can set a boundary with this person and you can say, hey, this doesn't feel good for me. You know, if you keep speaking to me in this way, I'm going to remove myself from the interaction. Again, it's a way, boundaries are a way of respecting our emotional experience and our emotional needs. Okay, so it's totally healthy to have boundaries in relationships, but in enmeshed family systems, it's not. We're not allowed to have boundaries, and that makes the relationships emotionally dysregulated and emotionally unhealthy. The third common sign that I see is excessive guilt and accompanying that shame. So it's related to what I was just talking about, but you feel this guilt when you choose yourself or in a moment where you may want to choose yourself because you have conflicting needs or wants in that moment. And it's conflicting with the needs and the expectations of the other person. So the example that I just gave, you might have felt a lot of guilt saying no in that moment to your mom if you're in an enmeshed family system. Either you won't say no because you self-sacrifice, that's the pattern, or if you do say no in an enmeshed family system, you will feel a lot of guilt and a lot of shame because you are not satisfying her needs and her expectations. So when you cannot fully satisfy your parents' expectations and needs, you will feel a lot of guilt. If you ever have a moment where there's something that you want to do or need to do for yourself, and so then you cannot fully satisfy their needs and expectations, you will feel guilt and you will feel shame. Even something like you didn't pass the exam to get you, or you got only a B on the exam, and therefore you're not going to get straight A's. So you feel excessive guilt and shame because you're not meeting the expectations that your parents had of you. So in enmeshed family systems, there's a lot of guilt and shame that's controlling our behavior, and it's controlling the way that we relate. The intention of that guilt is to keep us in enmeshed patterns and to stop us from doing things that are expected of us in those systems, but that are actually not necessarily healthy for us in the long term because we are not meeting our developmental needs. You know, children, adolescents, and young adults, they have a lot of developmental needs. And it's the parents' responsibility to help them learn how to get those needs met. Eventually, children, adolescents, young adults, they become more autonomous and more capable of meeting their own developmental needs, but they will continue to have developmental needs. Need for freedom, need for space, need for connection, you know, need for relaxation, different needs that we have. In a healthy family, we learn how to, one, listen to those needs, pay attention to ourselves, and to meet those needs and communicate with others in order to help each other meet those needs. And sometimes the need is space, right? That's a need. I have a need to not connect right now. And if you are in a healthy relationship with your parent, they will respect that. Okay, you need space right now. You need more freedom. You need autonomy. All right, I can give you that space. I can take care of myself. I can meet my need in this moment. And then we can connect at another time. Okay? So this excessive guilt, this conditioned guilt, which I've talked about a lot on my channel, it runs rampant in enmeshed family systems, and it controls us, and it's actually not healthy. It's not a healthy type of guilt. It's a guilt that maintains the dysfunction. So when you're healing from enmeshment, you have to begin to pay attention to where this guilt is showing up, how it's controlling your behavior, and you have to start facing that guilt. So for example, if you were to feel guilt in the moment that you said no to your mom when she asked you to make dinner together, you would, instead of self-sacrificing in that moment, the right choice would be to speak up. Hey, I'm feeling stressed. I need to relax because I have a huge assignment due tonight. Can we do this at another time? And she might become upset or disappointed, and you might have to experience your guilt. So when you're healing, you actually have to set the boundary. You have to have the emotional courage to do the hard thing, set the boundary, and feel through the guilt. Accept that the guilt is a part of healing. Okay? The next sign is emotional contagion, or absorbing the emotional states of others. So again, because of the unclear emotional boundaries, it's very common that when one person feels something in the family, let's say mom comes home angry or dad comes home angry after work, let's say that, everybody gets sort of activated and starts to like tiptoe around dad and sort of, contort around his emotional state. So everybody becomes activated. One person is sad, everybody becomes sad. One person is stressed, everybody becomes stressed. This is a really, really common experience in enmeshed family systems because there's not a clear understanding of ourselves as a separate nervous system. We have not learned to understand our own emotional experience as our own. We haven't learned how to feel and sense ourselves as a separate being and learn to self-regulate and ground ourselves and settle our bodies so that if someone that I love and am connected to is having some sort of activation in their nervous system, I can stay calm. And that doesn't mean I can't feel for them, I can't empathize, that I just sort of block off and disconnect. No, we can still have empathy. We can have empathy without getting lost and collapsing in their experience. Someone can be stressed near us, and if we love them, we can empathize, we can even help them, we can co-regulate with them, but we don't get stressed too, right? If they're angry, we don't get angry too. We can have separate emotional experiences, which is different in enmeshed family systems. We're all reacting to each other's emotions, and that reactivity spreads across the system, okay? Another common sign is performing versus being authentic. So it's very common if you grew up in an enmeshed family system to sort of play a role, right? To perform, to do things that you don't actually want to do in order to please others, in order to manage the emotional experience of others. That's essentially what people pleasing is. We are managing the emotional experience of others through our behavior. But then typically we are not actually living from our authentic emotional experience in that moment. So coming back to that example, it's a good example and I'll keep using it throughout the video. If in that moment you're sitting in your corner reading and relaxing and your mom comes in and asks you to have dinner, and you self-sacrifice despite not wanting to do that in that moment, you self-sacrifice in order to meet her need, in order to please her without actually communicating what state you're in and negotiating something that works for the two of you, or setting a boundary and choosing yourself. You suppress yourself and then you go and do what she expects of you. So now you are performing. You're going to be faking it. You're going to be in the kitchen pretending like you're enjoying doing that, pretending like you like being with her. But inside, that's not actually what's going on for you. And so you may be accumulating some type of resentment, or you may not be fully there. You might be dissociated. So you're not actually giving her full presence, right? You are operating from this fake self. And when I say fake, I don't mean to put a negative connotation on that word. There's, no one is to blame for this necessarily. It's the way the dynamic teaches us to be. We are conditioned and programmed to be this way because we think that's what we're supposed to do, and we don't realize that there's actually another way, a healthier way of being. Um, but in this situation, you end up performing. So you're putting on the performative self, which is actually a self that doesn't honor the authentic inside out experience. Something inside out in that moment would have been talking to your mom about where you're actually at emotionally. And then again, finding something that works for the two of you. So that may mean that you make dinner tomorrow night where you're more calm and you're going to be able to be more emotionally present with her. Or that may mean, again, finding that other alternative that she offered you in the healthy example, right? Well, how about you come sit on the couch and read your book so that you're a little closer to me, and I'll make you some dinner. That works for both of you guys. It honors the authentic emotional experience of both. She just wanted to be a little closer to you. You just wanted to be able to relax, right? So that is living from the inside out. It's authentic, right? And it's relational as well. The performative self is not relational. It dishonors the self as well. So then you have to repress your needs. Now, that's just one example that happens on one night, but imagine you're doing that on a daily basis, multiple times a day in all of the relationships that you have. That's going to add up over the course of many years, many decades. You're going to be essentially repressing all of your true authentic needs and always living from that false self. And that's going to create a monster internally that eventually is going to come out and cause destruction. That monster may show up as many different things. It may show up as depression, anxiety, an existential crisis, acting out, addictions, all sorts of things. But that repression is your emotions are still there. There's still a real thing that are happening inside of you. So you may think you may be repressing it, but it's going to come out in other distorted ways. And the healthiest way is to learn to start authentically honoring it, paying attention to it first, honoring it, and then working with it to meet your needs. Okay? The next one, the sixth sign, is absorbing projections, fears, and expectations from your parents. So if you, again, this is part of the performative self, but typically speaking in an enmeshed family system, the parents have a lot of expectations for how you should be in the world. They have a lot of fears about the way that you are in the world, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of making mistakes, fear of not living up to what they expect of you. And so you will feel like you need to live according to the expectation that your parent has for you, whether that be the career you choose or the partner, the romantic partner you choose, or just the way you behave, the way you talk, the way you dress, the way you look, your body, your face, different things like that. There's a lot of projected expectations of you, and then you start to live according to that instead of, again, what's authentic from the inside out for you. And then lastly and finally, there's little room for difference, privacy, personal space, freedom, and autonomy. So there's little room for an individual sense of self. Everybody's expected to think the same, to maybe even look the same, and if you start to express things that go against the group belief or the group expectations, that's going to generate tension and reactivity and likely conflict. So you don't actually have your developmental need of being autonomous and being different. That's why we talk about the process of differentiation. How can I begin to understand myself as a different person from my family system while still remaining connected to them? This doesn't mean that I go off on my own and just become a totally hyper independent person and never need my family. It's not about this. We can be in connection and yet still be different. I have a different emotional experience from you in this moment. I have different needs. I have different beliefs. I have different wants and desires. I have a different path from myself than perhaps you would ideally want for me. But in a healthy family system, that's okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to be your own person and to have your own path. And you're still going to receive love and affection and support in becoming yourself. But in an enmeshed family system, that's not always the case. If you go off path from this ideal that they've created in their head, there's going to be a lot of conflict and reactivity toward that. And you're going to be sometimes scapegoated, sometimes guilt tripped, sometimes criticized or judged or rejected. And that is going to create a sense that love is conditional, right? Unless I am being this specific person that they want me to be, I cannot receive a sense of belonging in this system. All right, guys, those are the 7 typical signs that I see in enmeshed family systems. If you're interested in learning how to heal from enmeshment, be sure to click the link in the description below. I have a free Healing from Enmeshment guide, a 23-page guide that I put together for you all. And I also put together a course, a mini course that I'm offering on my website, as well as a group coaching program, a very small, exclusive, private group coaching program. So if you are interested, be sure to check out the links in the description below for more ways that you can learn with me and deepen your healing from enmeshment process. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.